So the 1920s were in both the beginning of serious archaeology in China, the first publication of many sites, the first photography of many sites, and the first active scientifically controlled excavations. But they were also the period of the extremely widespread commodification of works of art. That's to say, objects being sold both by institutions, by private individuals, and in many cases being removed from known sites, and then sold for the international art market. And it was that process that brought the murals initially to Paris, and then subsequently here to Philadelphia when the museum purchased them.
We have two murals. One is constructed from 28 panels, and one is constructed from 23 panels. So looking at a total of 51 painted panels. So the project is pretty grand in scale. It is a really interesting conservation opportunity when you have a project this large. It kind of offers you this opportunity to do a real deep dive into this one particular material. So you get to spend a lot of time doing, literature research, but also it gives you the opportunity to do some material experimentation.
So, we have a huge responsibility with these murals, right? They were removed from one country in circumstances that, the museum wouldn't even dream of countenancing in the last 50 years. Those kinds of art market purchases are something that the museum no longer does. But they did happen. They're part of their legacy we inherit with the building and with the collection. But that gives us a very great priority to make sure that we're doing the best we can to look after and to care for and to make publicly accessible these murals.
The murals are painted onto mud plaster or tempered mud substrate, which would have been put up in several layers in a temple, also constructed likely from earthen materials. So we had the opportunity to make our own mud plaster panel before we began treatment. We really wanted to understand the physical properties of the materials that we were working with. I was specifically removing an old coating that was put on the murals in the 1930s when they were originally installed in the Rotunda Gallery. It was a shellac coating that over the 100 years that they've been up there has discolored, and that discoloration is obscuring the vibrancy of the original pigments.
There's a particular style of mural that's popular in a particular area at a particular time. So from the 13th and then into the 14th century is when this style of murals was being produced, and they're not produced earlier than that. They're not produced after. So they're very sort of distinctive to that period. So the murals, for that reason, they flesh out our ability here in the gallery to present the spread of Buddhism as a religion in East Asia for that period. Both of these murals reflect those relatively late translations of new Indian literature into Chinese. So they're one of a relatively small number of these monumental gable-end murals from temple halls, from monastery halls. I'm guessing at the figure, but there are probably a dozen or 2 dozen of these known. So they're relatively unusual.
It's a really satisfying conservation treatment. It's really, really wonderful to get to work on something that then kind of visually you can see the progress that you've made. We can learn so much from history, but really kind of the materials that we're working on, this is the physical evidence of history and culture. And it's important for people to be able to learn from those things and to have access to those things.